Hey, so it's Father Taylor here, and we have another in our series of people telling their personal stories of faith in their life, of their relationship to Christ. And some people share what the role of Trinity Church has been in that and how that's affected them. So today I have one of the people that like almost everybody knows, Mo LaVallee. And so you know Mo if you come in the back door, but if you're looking forward, you might not see him because Mo's always in the back running our service. Mo, how you doing?
Good. How are you? I
Good.
used to be
Thanks for
part of.
agreeing to
Yeah.
do this talk. So one of the things that you and I share in common, not that I was born in Western Mass, but I spent 20 years in Western Mass, and you're a Western Mass guy too.
Yeah, we're in Massachusetts.
Where? That's right. So you might have to say that again because you must have dealt with a lot of jokes like
Yeah,
where, Massachusetts.
we used to play
And
South
so
High
and
School.
so your life with faith, did that really begin in where, Massachusetts?
It did. It did. Ware had three large Catholic churches: the French, the Polish, and the Irish. I went to the French for a while. The grade school closed down, so I ended up going to the Polish Catholic school for a while. I
Hmm.
was an altar boy there and so on. So yeah, I grew up in the Catholic church. Fun memories of midnight mass, singing next to my parents. Yeah.
Wow. And so an altar boy. So how old were you when you were doing that?
Oh, probably fifth, sixth, seventh grade, from what I remember. Yes.
Great. And so like then you kind of grew up, graduated. I don't think a lot of people know that you were quite the athlete in high school.
Yeah, I played football, basketball, and baseball. I'd say baseball was my favorite,
Uh-huh.
and played
Right.
some baseball in college too.
And where did you go to college?
I went to Holyoke Community for a couple of years.
Right. So we have all kinds of connections, because I worked in. You were probably playing baseball about the time I was working in downtown Holyoke.
Probably.
So where would you say like faith really came alive and kind of like how did that grow in your life?
Yeah, so after high school and into young adulthood, I really hadn't gone to church. And after I met and married my wife, Jerry, um, we were living in Simsbury in a condo, and our neighbors invited us to Trinity, and this was back in 1989. So that was right after we got married and shortly before our son Nick was born. So that was our introduction to Trinity, and that was the first time we went back in 1989.
And who were these neighbors, if you don't mind?
The Yasnitsky family, I think some of our parishioners would remember them, but wonderful family. They ended up moving down south, but yeah, they invited us. They were members here for a while.
And so what was it like switching over from, having grown up going to mass at a kind of an ethnically Catholic church? What was it like from switching over to that to coming into, a little Episcopal church?
Right. So one of my fondest, best memories is one of the first services we were at Trinity, and it was during prayer time. And actually started hearing people praying out loud, which, to be honest with you, freaked me out because never really heard just regular parishioners start talking during the service. And it was the Baines, Alex and Sonia. They would pretty much every week, offer up prayers. And so for me, it was very new, very different. And like I said, at first kind of uncomfortable, but that was one of my best memories of Trinity.
And and how did you go from just being a guy, coming with his wife and the baby? Like how did you go? How did your involvement in church develop?
Well, my wife certainly was the more social one. I would have preferred not to, but she was more social. But for me, I was originally asked to be on an Emmaus weekend as part of an Emmaus team. And for those that know that ministry, it's a lot of meetings. It's a ministry to teenagers, so there's a lot of singing, a lot of music, but there's also a lot of sharing of stories. So I started to hear a lot of stories from other people,
Hmm.
their stories. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and that grew into helping with youth group, and then there was a slew of other roles that I played at Trinity.
And how about now? So that goes back to like, that goes back a ways. I mean, you guys have been here for 30 years. So how would you say your growth in Christ has How would you describe that, how that happened at Trinity?
Yeah, thinking back on this. So for me, it was not so much a conversion all at once experience. I've always known about God. I felt I've always had faith in God, but for me, it was more of a transformation. What I mean by that is the faith was there, it just grew. It was like a transformer going from 120 volts to 240 volts,
Hmm.
if you think of it that way. So there was a lot of little things over time um, that I found that build my faith and build my relationship with God. A lot of little things, like I said, that prayer memory is stuck in my mind. There were mission trips. There were roles played at Trinity as junior warden or helping with the youth group or Sunday school. Fond memories of mission trips to Nigeria and Mexico. So just a lot of slow growth is the way I would describe it. More like a crock pot growth versus like a microwave all of it all at once kind of a experience.
That's a great illustration. I love that. And how about in recent years? I mean, so sometimes what happens is, people have, like me, somebody can have a dramatic conversion, and then you remember those years as like the golden years, and then things don't seem to be as necessarily. Sometimes we can kind of just drift off, holding on to a memory, but that isn't so much your case. So what's happened in more recent years, where you've seen God at work in your life?
Yeah, there's a couple of examples I think that are more recent. So for example, a few years ago, my wife and I were visiting her grandmother in Meadowbrook home in Granby. And while we were in her room, a nurse aide came into the room to take care of her grandma's roommate. So as I was sitting there, I was watching the nurse aide work on the other person, and I felt a very, very strong call. This doesn't happen to me a lot, but at that time, it was very, very clear that I should be ministering to the elderly in some way. So not too long after that experience, actually, I enrolled in a CNA or nurse aide course at Capital Community College in Hartford, and I got my certification. And then shortly after that, I got a job at Meadowbrook in Granby. And I was working just one night a week. It was the graveyard shift on Friday nights. And that was after, working during the day on my regular job. But to me, that was a realization of a very strong call, a very clear call from God. And, I had the opportunity to act on it and follow it. And it was a very good experience for me.
Well, it's really fascinating because, I think a lot of us sometimes have moments where we say, oh, I could make a difference, or maybe I could pursue something, but we don't always like carry that through like an application process or taking a class, and then getting a job on top of our job. I mean, that's a pretty big deal that sense of call. So that's a great story.
And there's one other one too, I say very recent. So there's been a group of Trinity folks that have been getting together talking about mission work and how we can get out into the neighborhood or into our neighborhoods or into our towns, into our communities, just to get to know people, look for opportunities to serve or share the gospel, whatever the case is. So last summer, after one of these meetings that we had, my wife and I decided to just take a different route in walking our dog. So instead of walking in our immediate neighborhood, we thought that we would walk in a local apartment in Willow Arms. So on the way to one of those walks, while we were walking to Willow Arms, I actually noticed a neighbor or a young lady helping a neighbor get her lawnmower into the back of a car. So as it turns out, the young lady was the niece of this elderly woman that lives in our neighborhood. And, this young woman would drive 2 hours down from Massachusetts just to mow her aunt's lawn. So that was an opportunity, and I just offered, I could help, I could do the lawn for her, I could do whatever she needs to do instead of her driving all the way down. So anyway, the funny story is on the way to what we thought would be kind of our mission field, walking through the apartments, this opportunity was kind of put right in front of me. And as it turns out, I ended up getting to know that elderly lady and taking care of her lawn for the rest of the summer. So that was just a very clear example of being open and keeping our eyes open, and seeing the opportunities that God puts in front of us. That's a recent example.
Wow, so so it's interesting. You express these things kind of like, well, there I was at the nursing home and saw this lady being ministered to and felt a call to do it, so I did. So then we're taking a walk to go see if God might help us, reach out and connect with some other people. And we hadn't even gotten there, and he did. So there's a kind of you seem to have a gift of this awareness and an openness that God would even be. We can see these scenes and not see them as maybe God opportunities. But that's how do you think you develop this sense of like seeing these things as God opportunities?
I would say it's part of that transformation. So, having grown over the years, church has become, instead of an obligation, it's become a joy. Instead of just observing, now I'm participating. And I think kind of the old self was more kind of blinded, if you will, having blinders on, but the new self is more aware of opportunities and needs in others, and kind of turned from apathy to caring as well. So I think, again, it's just part of that slow crock-pot growth over the years, Taylor. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks so much for sharing today. And we look forward to hearing you speak again on Sunday. I think this gets posted before Sunday. I mean, I hope so. And so that's our, Sundays in a way is one of our big Sundays because that's our celebration of being able to make this offering to God for the year. So we're looking forward to that too. So we'll look forward to hearing you. And I guess we'll have to let somebody else drive the bus from the back while you're coming up to the front. So
Exactly.
all right. Hey, thanks, Mo. And
Sure.
great story. Thanks for sharing.
All right. Thank you. See you.